does not fit my operation.
Okay.
I let it go pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And it's been rehabbed by HPC. It's got the new tablet. It's got everything in it, all the new stuff. I let it go for about $2,000 if somebody's interested.
Oh, okay. Did you post that? Are you a member of ClearStar?
Of what?
Are you a member of ClearStar?
No.
Okay. I know there's a auction place on there. There's a locksmith auction forum if you type that into Google. And then if you're part of any of the Facebook groups, there's pages on there as well.
Yeah, I'm part of your group and part of
Okay.
I got about 3 or 4 locksmith pages that I follow every day.
Yeah.
But
Well, some of them have auction houses, so you might want to see if you can post them there as well.
Okay. All right.
Sweet.
Okay.
Okay. So this is Locksmith Live. I'm going to try and keep this down to about a 20-minute session or so, maybe a little bit less. But what Locksmith Live is it's just me going back, and it's going back and looking at a lot of the jobs that I've done and documenting them, and then posting them in Wayne's Lock Shop, and then being able to come back and revisit them and say, hey, what exactly did we have happen here, and what did we do to fix that? And one of them that we had, I'm sure we all run into exit devices or panic bars or crash bars with vertical linkage. So one of those things that we're going to take a look at today is a little video right here, and see how we can repair that, looking at the door as a whole and not just looking at exactly what the problem is. That was actually brought up in one of the last LSA meetings. Sometimes we get so focused on the lock or the locking device or the hardware that we're blinded by the other aspects and components of the door. However, they're all essentially important to a healthy function of a door. You're not going to function very well if you're trying to use your body and your leg doesn't work, or your arm, right? So you got to look at it that way. The entire door is an entire functioning unit. If the door closer doesn't work right, it's not going to work right. If the hinges aren't done properly, it's not going to work right. If it's not hung properly, it's not going to work right. And no amount of repair on the device is going to fix any of that. So let's take a look and see what we had here and go from there. So we are repairing vertical linkage as electronic exit device. Vertical linkage. That is no good. So we're going to fix that. Figure out what is catching or not catching, but obviously it needs to be in a lock position, and then it needs to catch on there. And then for some reason they put the bottom linkage on. But so if you can't hear the video, are people saying you can't hear the video very well? All I'm doing is explaining that we have an electrified exit device with vertical linkage, and that electrified linkage is not latching properly. And I'm showing that. I'm rattling the doors. You can see it. Things are very, very loose on this particular door here. And so we need to dive further into it to see what the actual problem is. These are real problems that I really fixed personally in the field. And that's something that I have not really seen much of in this industry, is people that are actually willing to go out, document what they're doing, exactly what they're doing, exactly how they're doing it, exactly why they're doing it, and sharing it with other people. So in case they run into that problem, they have a few other solutions that they may not have thought of. Doesn't actually lock into anything. And so we got the good old wood screw mounting in there, and screw missing. There should be a screw in there. There's not one. And so noticing missing screws is going to be the first portion of this. We're seeing that there are some screws missing in the portions that actually, the straps that actually attach the vertical linkage. And we're missing some screws, either they're stripped or they were never installed on the actual latch on the vertical linkage up top.
Wayne,
Yes, sir.
Are those, is that electrically operated panic bar?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the first things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get with whoever brought you there, that maintenance person, and you're going to have to ask them, I need an accurate credential and I need you to lock the system down. I need you to put this lock in lockdown mode so that I can test it and I can come back and, fix what's going on with it. In order to do so, I can't test lock and unlock if it's permanently dogged down or it's in the unlock position because it's probably on a timer. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where, learning how to work on electronic access and the questions that you're going to need to ask that individual and make sure they have the proper authorization and clearance to be able to even get that lock unlocked for you are all going to be big pieces of that puzzle. You can't just show up to the job site and talk to the local custodian and say, hey, I need you to unlock this. He's not going to have the credentials or login to be able to do it. So you need to have a top tier person that has access to the electronic access program and that has access to be able to turn those doors on and off, lock and unlock them so that you can test them mechanically. And then you can go into testing the electronic portion of it for your diagnosis. So lots of moving parts here, more than most people think. This is only going to compound and get more common as we progress into this electronic age that we're going towards.
Yeah, they use this like brass screw.
So you can see that that's one of the brass screws. The entire screw is made out of brass. Well, what is that going to mean for operation and working on this door? Well, it means that the brass is going to wear away easier and quicker. And you can see that it's done that to the threads. When they rammed it into the door, the screw did not cut threads into the door. The door cut threads into the screw. Bad times, not good stuff. This is all pure handyman stuff right here.
Get me a Dr. Pepper and then
And these threads are all stripped down and everything else. So, and when you're putting a brass screw into metal, it's not going to work very well because the brass is too soft. So it's not going to hold. It's just going to strip out and run the threads on the done.
stop living.
Did everybody see that clearly? Brass screw, not good for metal door. Bad times. It just flattened the threads rather than cutting into them and holding the door.
I don't have any other long Phillips head screws in these particular lengths. So to get this job just fixed and going, we'll just have to use some metal, longer self-tapping screws. We did get this repaired up here. We have some metal screws that are specifically designed for metal with a very thin threading. So now this is rock solid. We've got a screw in there. You can see them way back in there.
Okay, so we took a actual metal threaded screw, and I'll tell you what that was. Some of the most important screws that I actually use that save the day on everything are those self-tapping screws that come in select hinge, continuous hinge installations. They're always going to give you extra screws, and in fact, you're not going to use all of them in most cases. So saving those dark colored screws and the silver screws, they make perfect. They're the next size up from a hinge screw, so they work great in hinges. And the taper is actually perfect so that it fits the head of that taper into the hinge pocket, but it also is just the next size up. So if it's stripped out currently, it's going to create its own threads and grab. Same exact situation here. It fit into that hinge pocket, or it fit into that pocket perfectly on that vertical linkage, but it also lays flat. Excellent screws. I would buy those screws by the bucket if I knew exactly what they were, but I do enough continuous hinges that I can save a ton of them and I never really need to buy them.
And I was able to hold that screw in place with pliers while we inserted it here. So you don't have to pull the whole thing out.
Does everybody understand that too? That screw is behind the linkage. So I was able to actually insert it with some hemostats like so. These are hemostats. You can grab that screw, slide it in there, and then drill it into place, not having to remove the vertical linkage. You could remove the vertical linkage if you wanted to, but you're going to have to get that screw in there one way or the other.
All right, so now that we've got the lower plate attached here, that's all solid, everything's solid here. We're still running into an issue where if you look, you can see.
So notice step one was to make sure that everything is secured, fastened, and solidly secured to the door. That's process of elimination number one. Process of elimination number two is making sure that all of the vertical guides and the straps are in place, making sure all the hardware is where it's supposed to be, and then making sure the hardware screws are all in place. Now we can see that obviously what's the main problem here? This was not shimmed correctly. Either one of two things happened. the door started to sag over time and it's loosened that connection, or it was never installed properly and they never shimmed the catch or the strike plate down far enough to be able to interact with it properly. Probably a combination of both. More likely, the door has begun to sag. So this is where, what's the solution for that problem? Should we try and attack the hinges? Should we try and make the hinges hinge doctor them? Switch the hinges with the top and the bottom, get that hinge situation figured out? Or should we start spacing the plate down? Could be a combination of both.
Not quite grabbing far enough. So if we give this a real good pull, it just pops right open.
That's going to be a good test. I put my boot to every door that has vertical linkage like this to make sure that it's going to stay. I actually kick that door to give it one good whack to see if it'll come open. Okay. And if it does, then you got a problem. Obviously, don't do anything that would damage the door, but one real heavy yank, like you're really trying to overpower that thing. If you don't do it, somebody else will behind you unexpectedly, and that could cause a problem. If you install a fresh exit device with vertical linkage, or even a fresh exit device of any kind, then we're going to have a problem later. Paul Schaefer, you're raising your hand. Do you have a question? Paul Schaefer, you're raising your hand. Do you have a question?
No, I'm okay now.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you. All right. So let's get back into this thing.
Shim this down. And do it again. We got wood screws up in there. The other one's all stripped out.
Handyman special yet again. Wood screws in metal. Do not do it. Do professional things. Do not put wood screws in metal.
Can't really be reused. I really don't want to put another wood screw back in there. So we'll make sure that we use metal screws. We'll either tap the hole or we'll use self-tapping screws in that metal frame. And then you never want to just put washers behind there to hold it. You wouldn't want to put something just like.
Do we understand why you don't want to put washers behind a strike plate? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
It'll wobble.
It'll walk. It'll walk. It'll wobble and walk, and it'll work its way loose because it's not completely supported with a full plate all the way behind it.
This back behind there. Okay. You want to make sure you have a full mounted backing plate that the screw can actually go through. Okay. So you want to use these plates, spacer plates. The other things that I'm noticing when we put this spacer plate in here is notice how the door doesn't sit full flush. It actually moves. Has nothing to do with this here. Actually has to do with the door closer.
Look at the door closer. Okay. The leg bone's connected to the hip bone. The door's connected to the door closer. When the door closer is mounted in this concealed fashion where the arm's up against the door, it's not going to close all the way. So we have to adjust that. Again, we came here because the customer said that their vertical linkage was not latching properly. Their exit device is not working. They want an exit device repair. Well, to do that, look at all of the steps that we've had to do to make sure that we can ensure that this exit device is going to lock properly. We have to make sure that all the screws are in place. We have to make sure that the plate is shimmed properly. And now we've got to address the door closer.
Watch the door closer hit the door. So it impacts.
Notice that there's a spot on that door where it's rubbing too. So these are all things that you need to be looking for.
And it's here, not allowing the door to close. So we need to adjust this screw, get a gap in between here and the door, and then it'll pull all the way shut. All right, so we've got a good amount of room between here. So we can fit our hand in there.
That's my normal spacing, is I put my fingers in between there.
Locking and see, comes locked every single time. Has a little bit of play. We'll adjust this slightly and then add the rest of our screws. But the number one thing is just making sure that you don't, that this isn't impacting the door, impeding the closing. If we would have adjusted this, then you'll fight a never-ending battle. And the problem was always back here. Okay, so now we finally have this thing all set up. We got all of the screws in, and now actually functions as it should. Locks up tight. Door closer's not interfering anymore. Everything's all tight in here. It's shimmed down properly. And we have 4 screws instead of 2 screws in there. So now this thing should work for a good long time. We'll go ahead and button everything up and we're all done. Alrighty, everything's all locked up, nice and tight. Boom. Oh.
Cool.
Wayne,
Alrighty. Yes.
have you ever used the pop rivet threads?
Yes. Rivet gun, nut zerts. They call them riv nuts, nut zerts, and blind nuts. Yes, they're my friend. I love them.
I do too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions about the exit device repair that we did here, and questions about looking at the entire door as a complete unit and not just focusing on the lock or the exit device or the exit, the mechanism? Does anybody have any other questions on that? Or do you have any other suggestions as to what we could have done to this particular repair to make it go smoother, better, or otherwise?
Wayne, you mentioned that you were in the process of putting together a survey sheet for the opening.
Yes.
For others that may not see it yet, when you approach the door, obviously it's more than just the lock or the question that they have on the work order. And I know there's one on the LSA site, and by all means, yours may be more complete, but it reminds us, even if we're not fixing everything, it reminds us to look at everything, which in this case includes the door, the type of door, material of the door, etc., anything about the door slab itself, the lock itself, which you've just talked about, if any glass or peepholes, the lights on the side, if they're interfering, those things, hinges, closers, thresholds.
Yep.
And you didn't mention the thresholds, but that's sometimes a major problem.
Absolutely.
Electronics, if it's a electrified hardware that you just mentioned, troubleshooting that. If it's a fire door or non-fire door, know the difference and how you service them differently.
Correct.
And possibly even take a picture of it. That's what's on this form, just to remind us what to do when we're there. If we forget everything else,
Yeah.
make sure we check all those things. If not just to repair it, it's for upselling if you want to as well.
Yeah, and I have some pretty stringent rules on upselling. You've brought up some very good points, and I really appreciate that. I'm not there to upsell the customer something they don't need, nor do I encourage that for anybody else to do. Okay. But I do always want to let my customer know and inform them. I feel it's my duty as a professional to inform them that they might have some violations that might get them some tickets from either the fire or building inspector later. And those can all come into play with that. Number one is, you notice that you saw only vertical linkage. Well, that's because that's all that's allowed now. Anything that goes down is technically against your ADA compliance, because people with wheelchairs that roll through there, it can hit their legs or their chair, and they can become entangled with it. That's at least the last information that I remember hearing as to why we're not seeing vertical rods going down anymore. And the down ones are usually the ones that collect all the crap and, don't work anyways. So that's why you see the exit device going up. And absolutely looking at the threshold, looking at the hinges, looking at the reveal, looking at the seal, looking at the fire sticker, looking at any of that stuff is all definitely part of our job. And I like to take pictures, and like that little video at the end, I actually send that to my customer. Here's what happened. And then I include those documents and those pictures in the actual invoice. So if we have a problem later, they'll say, well, why did you come out to fix this door 3 or 4 times? I can show you what we did each and every time, and I have physical evidence to prove it. And if I really need to go into it, I can go back in my database and cloud, and I can pull up that video and say, look, here's how it was working. Here's what we did to fix it. Here, 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 and here. And I can just bury them in evidence until they get off my back. But yeah, we're coming up with an app that's going to have all of that information in there. It's just going to take a while. You know how things are, but that's good stuff. I appreciate that. Thank you, John. Do you have anything else? Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Hey, Wayne, how are you?
Hey, what's up?
So one of the things that I noticed that a lot of guys don't pay attention to, and this is mostly for exterior type of doors, is the weather stripping. The
Yes.
weather stripping can cause a door not to close correctly. I
Yes.
just had a job recently where I was able to rekey a lever lock and it was
Mhm.
working fine. But I did point out to the customer, I said, your weather stripping is hanging down. Eventually, this door may not close properly depending on the weather or if someone bumps into it. So I already mentioned about the weather stripping, and sure enough, a week later, they called me and said the door wasn't closing correctly. I said, well, I took pictures. I informed you that your weather stripping needs to be replaced. And
Yes.
so they admitted that they were wrong. And I charged accordingly for the second time coming out and weather stripping. But many
Yep.
times we don't pay too much attention to the weather stripping, and also looking for scrapes or marks on the door where it's rubbing. You usually see some sort of shiny metal or something where the doors are rubbing. And like John said, the threshold is key too. Sometimes the door is hanging because of the screws are loose, checking the screws. But very good video, very detailed. I like what I saw there. Very good job.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And like I said, these are going to be, you brought up some great points. These are designed to be little individual bite-sized pieces for people to think about. And I will have much more content, including the adjustable weather stripping on storefront doors. A lot of people don't even know that that's adjustable. Replacing that weather stripping. We're going to have lots and lots of opportunities to cover all of those things, to adjust that weather stripping for the wintertime, adjust it for the spring or summertime, and go over hinge looking for those signs where you're going to see those scrape marks at the top of the door on double doors, scrapes on the bottom, and lots of identifying features as well that are going to leave evidence that there's a problem, how to document it, and how to explain that to your customer so it doesn't look like you're trying to upsell them. You're actually just trying to solve all of their problems for them. And I even tell, that's the first thing that comes out of my mouth. If you can pre-frame the situation as, I fixed the problem that you have. However, X, Y, and Z are concerning to me, and I'm not saying that you need to use me or my company to fix them. However, I do encourage that you put them on your list to fix in the future. 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you to just fix it right then and there, simply because you weren't looking to be greedy and looking for another thing that just charges an upsell. You're actually trying to help them. And I'll usually throw in there, if it is an ADA violation or a fire violation, I'll say this could cost you a ticket in the future if you get inspected. I'm trying to prevent you from getting a fine. Basically, if you make it sound like you're on their team trying to help them out, you're going to be their guy or gal. Good stuff. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Wayne, I want to ask you also, how do you normally tape your videos? Do you do it on your phone or you do it by camera? Or do you have somebody kind of standing there while you're doing the job? How do you?
I would love to have a camera person. In fact, that's the number one complaint people have, is that I don't have a camera person, because I just can't afford to have somebody follow me around like a puppy dog. But in most cases, I have a camera holder and it just holds my phone. I don't know where my other one is. Something like that. Just grabs your phone and then it clamps onto stuff. But I mean, my phone records in 4K, for crying out loud. They're like, Selena Gomez is using phones to make their music video, for crying out loud. So it's definitely high quality content. It's just the editing and all that fun stuff later on. But yeah, it's mostly the phone. So good stuff. Great questions. Thank you so much. I'm going to share one more screen share here, and we're going to check out this Triton video.
Hello, this will be one
And that'll be it.
of many topics that will be covered in the Quickset Smart Key Killer or Defeat class that I will be hosting tomorrow in webinar format. If you would like.
We're not doing the class tomorrow. That was a little bit of an overstep, but I wanted to feature the Triton key machine here, so I thought this would be a good little short for it.
To join tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, please fill out the application with the link below. This is a dual custody or dual cylinder Quickset Smart Key deadbolt. These are very popular in apartment complexes where a master key is needed to control that apartment building. It has 2 separate cylinders, and the upper cylinder actually has a slightly different keyway and a slightly different key blank. We were able to purchase these master key blanks and use the LockTech decoder tool to go ahead and decode that smart key lock, just like a regular smart key lock. And now on the Triton Plus key machine, we have cut out a brand new key.
Okay, so Triton is not just for automotive
Hope to
work.
see you tomorrow.
It is for everything. Okay, just to give you guys a heads up. It works great for pin tumbler locks. It works great for cutting SFIC. It works great for cutting just about everything. So if you're interested in a new key machine, check out the Triton Plus for a couple more. I think it's only $1,000 or $2,000 more dollars than like a mechanical blitz or something. It'll do just about everything you need to do. It'll even make the wavy cuts so the points aren't so spiked, so that the key actually operates smoother. And my customers actually do appreciate that. If I hand them a sharp cut key or a punch cut key, and I hand them that wavy cut key, they usually tend to like that wavy cut key that takes the points off just a little bit more because it goes in and comes out a little bit easier. All right, with that, we'll wrap it up unless there's any other questions, comments, or concerns.
Where did you buy your Triton?
It came directly from Lock Labs. But if you're who's your main supplier?
Well, I use Hans Johnson.
Okay. I'm pretty sure CKL has it. Banner has them. IML has them. The big guys have them. It's just a matter of who has the best price and who's willing to work with you. The other thing is this is that perfect hybrid between import machine that you can't get tech support for and an import style machine that is imported but does have US based help with people that can actually communicate with you properly and solve your problem. There's a US based telephone line where somebody can communicate with you and help you through your problems. All righty. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week on Locksmith Live. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Wayne, for your time.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
Wayne.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. I appreciate
Good
everybody
meeting.
here.
Good
Thank
meeting.
you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have